Crypto markets had a rough weekend. Bitcoin drifted down, but is slightly recovering, and altcoins seem to have had a capitulation type event. I will not dare say that they have capitulated. Last week, they were all sitting on support. Well, now they're sitting on a lower support, right? Which we all know is totally possible at any given time. But I've got arguably my favorite guest of all time, who I feel like we've done this about 30 times now. Mike McGlone from Bloomberg to talk about why it's happening. Not altcoins specifically, but what's happening with the crypto market and where that falls in context of macro and global markets. He's the best in the business. You guys don't want to miss this. Let's go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Street. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel. And I don't know, let your tears of pain from the weekend go ahead and drip down on that like button. So yeah, it's Monday, and we watched the market sort of bleed out over the entire weekend, although we did see yet another sort of Sunday, Monday change in the market, some bullish divergence that I always like to talk about, and a bit of hope. But as my guest we have today always says, it's all about the macro. I'm going to bring him on in a second. But first, of course, got to tell you guys about our amazing sponsor for Mondays and Tuesdays. That is Vauld. I know that many of you guys have checked it out. I've had a lot of people sort of praising them and telling me how amazing their experience there has been. We've seen a lot of platforms based in the United States, obviously, start to see their rates go down, interest rates go down, a lot of pressure from regulators. Vault still holding strong at 12.68% for USDC, 6.7% for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and allowing you to buy all of these dips automatically. Please click that link below and check them out. But now I'm going to move on and bring on my good friend, Mike McGlone. Mike, how are you, man?
Hey, Scott, I'm good. I'm honored with that introduction. I'm going to do my best to live up to it.
Yeah, it's over for you. Basically, you have no chance. I'm sorry.
I agree. Peak.
So yeah, you've been doing a lot of work, obviously, on these markets. I have to imagine that they've got you working overtime with all of the nonsense that's happening. But I have a feeling that the general context of your thoughts has not changed dramatically. Is that true?
You're right. You're exactly right. And the good news is it's kind of, I guess for me, from a strategist, my goal is to have a view, express it, and then let people do with it as they will. And so far, it's fitting into how the view has, we expressed over 6 months ago, and that this is an ebbing tide of massive speculative excesses in all markets. Cryptos were just a great leading indicator, and now we're taking that tide out. It's the question of how far. And this week, the Fed's going to raise 50 basis points for the first time in years. I can go back and check, but I haven't seen that in a long time. Yeah. And I think that's going to be part of the trigger that's going to flush out the rest of the excesses in the market, most notably equity market, and then Bitcoin will come out ahead. And it's already happening. So like you mentioned, I think we've talked about it first. So right now, since we're live, Nasdaq, I look at the E-mini, it's down 22% on the year. And the Bitcoin live is down closer to 16% on the year.
Yeah, and Bitcoin just dropped a few $100s right when the market opened.
Yeah.
Listen, I've always been one who's like, it's not a correlated asset when you zoom out, but hard to argue with it in the very short term. Right.
Yeah. And the key thing is it's less, but Bitcoin is the much more volatile asset. So in risk management, everything's volatility weighted. Meaning, okay, if you buy T-bills, you're getting nothing, but you have no risk historically. You just might melt over time. If you buy gold, you have some risk. If you buy Bitcoin, you have typically 4 times the risk. In history, you've had 10 times the risk. And that's the key thing I see happening in Bitcoin. I look at, an annual volatility. Just 5 years ago, Bitcoin was like almost 8 times the volatility of the Nasdaq in terms of risk. And now it's like 4 times the risk in Nasdaq. Where's that going? Bitcoin risk is going down versus the stock market is becoming a major asset. What I see is bids below and things like, and I can talk about other ones too, cryptos, mostly the top ones, and offers above in the equity market. To me, that's the big picture.
Yeah, I mean, Nasdaq put in a yearly low basically on Friday, right, and is continuing down now as we speak. So clearly not much confidence. I had John Najarian on last week, and he basically said, I think the Fed should just do this 0.5 and call it a day. That would be the end of the tightening. But I don't particularly see that happening. I think they'll probably, I guess we'll see what the reaction is.
But I hope he's right, because the market will do it for him. That's what the Fed,
Yeah.
I think, wants. So this is a jawboning stage. And they even had a few say we might go 75. It's like, okay, market, get the hint. This is a lesson I learned being on the trading desk, and my colleague, my Fed watcher David Jones taught me. No, the Fed doesn't care. Sometimes they're big boys, and they will warn you that sometimes the stock market has to go down. And this is one of those cases. They won't say it, but we all know it, and that's why they're jawboning right now. So we're down. Nasdaq, S&P is the big one, down 14% in the year. It's the key thing is we still have more Fed hikes priced in the market, more aggressive hikes, and that's the big difference. The last time we had a correction was 2020, and even one before in 2018. By this time, the markets are down this much. We already started pricing in that forward curve that the Fed was coming out, and they weren't going to tighten as much. Now, the prices are even more tightening. And I like to watch futures a year from now. I used to trade in those pits. So it's what those futures are watching a year from now. So what I really glad about talking to you is right now I'm in the process of writing my crypto outlook for the month, and I wanted to hone some of my ideas. I mean, I was at crypto Bahamas last week, and to me, my key theme will be is you want a good bottom indicator in Bitcoin and cryptos. It's the Fed Fund Futures at 13. If you don't know what that is, I'll show you. It's basically what the market expects the Fed to be doing a year from now. Right now, it's priced for 3% or maybe more, and the actual rate is less than 1%. Once that forward expectation starts bottoming, I think Bitcoin's going to bottom.
That's an interesting way, I think, to view it. So, I mean, is your feeling that will continue to rise, the futures, or that we will actually start to see it dipping?
Yeah, and guess what the key trigger is? The stock market. So
Yeah.
That's the number one, and I do love the pushback on this, but even Ben Bernanke said it in his book, The Courage to Act, which I read years ago, and that is the number one thing right now to stop the Fed from tightening is a sharp drop in the stock market. The problem is it's not enough yet. So okay,
Right,
let's say if we can just get one of those days. Sometimes it just takes one day. You come in, you're down 5 to 10%, or a week. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just a little bit of wobbly extra volatility. Stock market crash 87 was one day. The Fed was easing within a few days of that. I mean, it's sad, but the thing is, markets just so expensive, and people forget. I can dig into those, but historically, as Benjamin Graham said, we're in one of the most biggest equity rallies we've ever seen, and now it's just the punch bowl is being taken away. So that's where the thing is, cryptos are part of that. They were a great leading indicator. So to me, that's all the macro we are right now.
Well, what I find really interesting, though, is that obviously as you said, the S&P is down 15%. But in the past, I don't recall these sort of massive large cap drops that are themselves down that 30% that you're sort of looking for, right? The PayPals, Facebooks, Netflix, like overnight, in 5 minutes, 30%, 25%. I mean, look at Amazon, even Apple, right? I mean, there's a lot of cracks here in the facade. The question is, like, can it just happen to those stocks and not have the entire market drop 30?
Well, they're the laggards. I understand. I'm glad you mentioned those, Scott, the Amazons and Apples, because it reminds me of GE in 2008. I just remember walking into my office at S&P, and I was like, first one there. And yeah, but GE mattered then. Now, who cares? That's how things happen in life. And they had missed. And I'm like, oh, that was an inflection point. I don't remember exactly what earnings are. I think it was second Q2. And then the whole thing plunged. We just had that last week. Amazon and Apple, the darlings of the last decade, they're missing. All right, get it. That's your trigger. So that trigger is that's the next 20%. Maybe we'll get lucky and it's not much in the whole market. But the internals have been really bad for a while. I've heard about many other stocks declining, just like you've seen in altcoins. These are just the big stalwarts. Now people are hitting the triggers. And I've heard this, the one thing that's beneficial of being on Wall Street for 30 years is some of the people running the big money. And one of my former boss who hired me 30 years ago, now we're really close. He runs a lot of money. His quote is for his clients. And yeah, we're buying 2 notes, we're selling equity. Simple. It's just, we want to ride it out.
Yeah. And what we also talked about before, obviously we're seeing the Nasdaq put in new lows. I'm sure we probably will likely see that with the S&P as well for the year. But Bitcoin, even though it seems volatile and painful, is actually putting in lower highs and is not anywhere near at the moment. God, I don't want to jinx it, but the 33,000 yearly low.
So we know to blame if it goes lower. That's good, because usually I just say blame me. But it's one of those things you have to watch, or as a trader and a strategist, you're always looking for diversions. And Bitcoin is showing significant divergence strength. I mean, it's hanging above for the 30,000. I think is solid support. Anytime it gets lower, you feel more bids coming in, and even just lately, like I said, right now I'm looking at 16% down in the year. Nasdaq down 21%. Bitcoin at this stage should be down well over 50%. It's
Yeah,
just
based on the past, sure.
And it's not. So that's what's different. And we all sense it. We see it. And that's a cool thing I see at these conferences. When you meet some of the smartest people on the planet and you're sitting eating dinner and the guy's from a major defense contractor and he's with the pension fund, or you meet people from sovereign wealth and endowments and things, I'm like, okay. And Sam Bankman-Fried even said they all want to get in. They just can't do it the way they want yet. And there's regulation to go through. But that's the bid below. That's the new technology. And so that's why I'm very confident about cryptos, but I fully expect we have to get through this winter first. I just don't know how far it goes. And like I said, to me, the key thing is I think we're going to see a good long-term transition. We're going to see an enduring bear market, and so enduring underperformance period in the equity markets always happened. Which is look at after 2000, it took 13 years to take out that height to stay above that height. Okay. Yeah, exactly. People look at that like, oh, it's not going to happen again. Like, that's why it's going to happen again.
It's going to happen again. Everything
yeah.
happens again.
Well, yeah, exactly. The big difference is the Fed's selling calls, as my colleague Jonathan Lesden says. They're not buying puts anymore. They're selling calls against the stock market. They have to. And so that we might have an enduring period of that, but I think just a resumption of that enduring outperformance in the major cryptos, and some that'll creep up. But the broad market, people need to understand that economics are not good for altcoins. There's 19,000 of them. It's just the rules of economics. Maybe there'll be 10 that'll get into an index that'll do really well. But when you have that much supply and that much free ease of entry, prices will just not go up well unless economics don't matter anymore.
Yeah, it makes sense. So listen, this morning you published a report. I just love the title, your commodity report. Commodities appear at higher risk of 2008 style pump and dump. Can you talk about that a bit? Because I think commodities have sort of been the big story, right? Obviously, once Russia invaded the Ukraine, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I do love about my position at Bloomberg is I'm completely independent. I've been at spots where buy side, sell side, where you have to go with the manager. Sometimes they're not older and more experienced than you, but you have to say, okay, yeah. But here, that's my complete outlook for commodities. And when you hear the masses worried about inflation, typically it's over, and that's the cases. So let's start with crude oil. Crude oil is right now about $100. The people who are bullish crude oil, I think, are forgetting what's happened in the last decade that's pressured crude oil lower, and that is the U.S., most notably North America, U.S. and Canada, moving from a net importer. I mean, I was pumping gas in 1979. I can tell you that story, to a net exporter. And that process is accelerating. I drive an electric car for a reason. It's accelerating. It just had a little blip because prices plunged. And now we have this war. So I look at $100 as the binary model. It goes to 50 or 150. My bias is have a view, it's going to 50. If I'm wrong, blame me. And here's why it's going to 50. First of all, that's been the trend. It's been the predominant area. It's the average price since the plunge in 2014, and it's still above the U.S. cost of production, which has been the primary shifting process of commodities for many years. The U.S. is just crushing this commodity thing because we're adopting technology, not because it's just a part of the system. And the key thing I like to ask people is, if you're bullish crude oil, then why are we still about $45 below the all-time high? There's a good reason, because of that. And then I look at the other part of the binary model, 150. People keep calling for 150. I'm like, what does that mean? Almost guaranteed massive global recession. And we're going to probably go there anyhow. So the key thing is, like, you know, from people like Jeff Booth, is don't underestimate technology overwhelming supply and demand. And that's where you get from a commodity guy like me that sees copper going down and China's part of that. China's in decline, pushing back on cryptos, pushing back on free market capitalism means this bastion of commodity demand is failing. Okay, so that's part of it. And then you go over to elasticity. And I'll mention what really matters there. So we can create more liquid fuel crude oil with technology, and we use less of it with technology at lower costs. That's just been a fact since our data goes back. I've got 2014. That's the big difference with Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's no elasticity supply. So we know Bitcoin by code, 900 coins a day. That's it. Drops to 450. As a commodity guy, I'm like, okay, all that matters is demand adoption going up. You look at Ethereum. What they've done with the protocol change and potentially with the merge, which is still dicey, is that demand is heading lower. And the key thing I'll end with, and I know this has been a rant, is one thing I was really impressed with at the conference, Scott, is the notable mentions of Solana. And this weekend we saw what happened. People keep talking about Solana. I'm like, oh boy, I guess I better learn about Solana. Scott, can you help guide me on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth learning about. I just sort of make the point in general when I talk about layer ones that none of them are ready to scale for mainstream adoption, right? And we see it over and over
Good
again.
point.
I'll talk about it later. I mean, obviously the bathing ape, excuse me, Bored Ape, that threw me back to my old days of bathing ape clothing. But obviously they froze the entire Ethereum network. I think that gas fees were $12,000 this weekend because of a single NFT mint. And then basically the same thing sort of happened on Solana because of bots, and they were down for 7 hours, right? And listen, these are not criticisms; they're just growing pains, right? But as you said, like, you know that these things, like you're not putting a billion people on any of those layer ones and having it function, right? So we need a lot more solutions. But I do think that Solana is extremely interesting. I own it. I believe that they'll figure it out. It's just like you said, there's a lot of question marks. But I mean, also, you were at Crypto Bahamas, which was an FTX and Salt thing, and Sam Bankman-Fried obviously is a huge, I think, Solana bull historically. So,
well, there you go. That's part of it. But a lot of it was the third-party conversations. Obviously, there was marketing there, but I met so they would show up, an NFT platform provider, all art, and everything's there for their platforms are based on Solana. So that a lot of that digs into the weeds of the technology. And I need to try to extrapolate, okay, I need to understand the technology enough to figure out supply and demand trends. And it's clearly positive for the demand side.
Yeah. So I just mentioned Ethereum, and you recently did a full primer on it. Ethereum, 21st century finance building block from Bloomberg. Could you talk about your general view on Ethereum?
Yeah, obviously it's, first of all, supply and demand dynamics are very positive. The protocol EI was a 1559, and then that was just shocking. How, I love that sophisticated acronym NGU, number go up technology. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's true, but it's true. Okay,
supply.
Okay, and the demand and adoption is increasing, and anybody who wants to get involved in NFTs has to buy Ethereum. But to me, the bottom line is simplistically just look what's happening with tokenization. And this is a question I really enjoyed asking Anthony Scaramucci. And there was like a little press thing, and I got to talk to him behind the scenes a little bit. And it was about what stops this process of tokenization. Ethereum's the leader in facilitating the ability for people to track the US dollar via tokens, Ethereum tokens or any other token. That process wasn't possible before. And then when people push back on the dollar and cryptos and how the dollar is getting replaced, I'm like, well, the number one traded crypto on the planet is a dollar token, Tether. It's only been increasing. Okay, but it's controversial. But that's just the key thing to think about when you think about cryptos. Okay, there's Bitcoin, there's the dollar, and what's making this possible is Ethereum. And what else is Ethereum making possible? NFTs, tokenization, everything. And I look at it from we don't have time to dig into details, but having run commodity businesses, there's a good court case in history where Ethereum or tokenization of all assets is possible, because you think you're stealing their intellectual property, but there's been a court case when it happened with the crude oil where if it's in the public domain, you can do that. And to me, it's just a matter of time that if I'm at a centralized exchange like the ICE exchange, LME, who had problems in nickel, I'm right now trying to figure out what can I do to be as good as Bitcoin, because that is the thing I'll end with is every day that goes by and you see disruptions. I come from a trading background in Chicago. You see this thing called Bitcoin, you think, my gosh, there's never been anything in the history of mankind that is tradable, this fluent, this easy, this simplistically, without interruptions. It's just a pure trading vehicle. And it's becoming, I think, shifting from risk on to risk off.
Absolutely. Love it. I can't think of a better way to finish. Unless you have any final thoughts, anything we didn't touch on that you want to share, but I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, right now I see cryptos as basically a pawn in the ebbing tide that the Fed will keep jawboning until the stock market, that's the number one indicator, until it goes down enough that makes the Fed pause. And we'll see that in Fed fund futures. And that's when I think we're going to see what's already been happening accelerate. I mean, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I don't know what other ones, maybe a Solana, just continue to resume their outperformance trends. And they've already been doing a good job of that this year.
Can't wait. Nah, listen, March 2020, we saw it firsthand, right? Everything bottomed and then Bitcoin went up 17 times while the stock market doubled. It's not hard to see. You may get more downside, but you certainly get more upside. So guys, everyone, please follow Mike. I know his Twitter, but I want to make sure I get it right. It's Mike McGlone 11, right? On Twitter, guys, go give him a follow. I mean it when I say nobody I respect more and whose opinion I follow more closely. I avidly read all of the research and follow everything you do. So thank you once again for taking the time to join.
Thank you, Scott. It was great seeing you at Bitcoin 2022.
Yeah, man. We'll hang out again soon. Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, Mike and I actually went down to Bitcoin 2022. I was planning to go on the Wednesday, and I went on Tuesday just to see Mike and hang out with him at the Bloomberg event there, and got to catch the very last few minutes. We were late, of course, because of Miami traffic of him talking to Michael Saylor, which was absolutely amazing. So listen, I know that you guys want to see some quick charts, so I didn't share my screen. Let me dig in really quick, and then we'll go over a few news things and keep it moving. But here you go, just so you guys can see the Nasdaq here. This was the QQQ, which is ETF for trading it. And as you can see, the 2022 started up here, right? You know, like a high 300s, almost 400. Put in a low, another low, put in another low in March, and has now put in yet another low last week. So that's what we were talking about. Nothing really to see there. Just show you 317 was basically the low for March, and it's putting in another one. Opened low, gap down, and now has pushed up a little bit, which is not unexpected. As for the Bitcoin chart, let me see if I can find the monthly. If I pulled it up, I didn't. So let's take a look at the weekly chart really quick. Not panicking here still as much as you would think you might want to, right? This candle here with this long-legged doji to the upside, a million ways you can classify that candle. Everyone has a different one. You would think that it's generally bearish to have this sort of upwick. But in this context, when it's at a bottom, it's actually not particularly bearish. It's viewed as a potentially bullish candle. Then again, it was not confirmed the next week, on the next candle. But what we do have on the next candle, look at these three candles right here. See these? Zoom in. These are ridiculous, by the way. 3 weeks, every candle open and close was basically the same, right? From bottom to top, top to bottom, bottom to top, whatever, top to bottom. 3717 to 38,395. And look where we're kind of holding right now. I'm not saying it will continue to hold, but wicking down into that major area of support. And this spinning top right here, listen, this is actually could be called a spinning top right now, not even a day in. But with the long wick up, long wick down, and this body like this, not a doji where it's, you know, a tiny little body, is showing more indecision. A lot of indecision. This is not screaming continue down at this exact moment. Not saying it won't, but a lot of indecision here. And looking at the daily, kind of what I was alluding to before, now we have a very clear channel. Yes, this didn't quite touch. I think if you open it on Coinbase, it's actually a pretty perfect channel. Someone asked if triple tweezers are a thing. The answer is yes. Sure. Any tweezers are tweezers. Just got tweezer to tweezer to retweezer, tweezer to retweezer, and tweezers get. Right? Higher lows right here continuing. Here's the low on this one. Barely. 37,149, but right now putting in a low here. But look at this. This is now a perfect ascending confirmed support. 3 touches. 1, 2, 3. Literally perfect. Like if you had drawn this trend line from here to here, which we had, this would be where you would theoretically be looking for a long. The problem is you still got a whole lot of resistance up ahead. Then I just refuse to get too bearish when I see bull divs building like this, right? You got a bullish divergence here. Bullish divergence now here on the daily in a descending wedge. This should at least give us relief up to like 41, 42, something like that. If it breaks out, there's no confirmation unless it breaks out to the upside. But look, you can see sustained bullish divergence. That is another higher low. What you're watching for now, we haven't had it, is if this makes a higher high on RSI, we end up with a lower high on price, which would be hidden bearish divergence, right? But basically you have continued strength here. I see somebody asking, Sly, what's up for DXY thoughts? We can take a quick look. I think DXY is going to be holding this major support. I don't love it, right? I mean, this is not, if you want the dollar to go down, this is not what you want to see, right? We got the March 23rd, 2020 top for the dollar there before we obviously dumped out of COVID, right? And that was the high basically since it was only higher in 2017. So just looking at that, right? And I showed you guys this over and over again. The dollar. This is the dollar versus other currencies. Remember that. Dollar strength generally means stock, asset, hard asset, gold, etc. Weakness. Bitcoin, you can even argue. Descending channel, double bottom breakout. look, you had the breakout of the double bottom, retest right there, hit the target. Flip that, support. Flip that, support. Over and over again. Well, now potentially with a little maybe bull flag here, yikes, flipping that last level of 102.992 to support. Guys, there's a lot more to analyzing the dollar than a chart, okay? Everything. Take every chart you see all the time. I've been saying this for as long as you've known me. Every chart with a grain of salt. It's chart. Things happen in the real world that the chart's not going to tell you. These are risk management tools that can help you make some decisions. There you go. Dollar clearly putting in some sort. I don't like to zoom into the 4 hour on the dollar. It's kind of absurd. Actually, that looks like a head and shoulders when you zoom into the 4 hour. But putting in some sort of consolidation here above support. All right, guys, let's move on a bit to the news. Oh, that's a good one. Jeremiah was a bull flag. Dun-dun-dun, was a good friend of mine. Dun-dun. He never understood what he said, but I helped. Okay, whatever. You guys get it. All right. After 8 years, Wikipedia stops accepting Bitcoin and Ethereum donations. Lame. The Wikimedia Foundation had previously accepted Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash through BitPay. Actually, really interesting story. They were taking it from 2014, originally with Coinbase, and then BitPay. They did a poll of their respondents. There were very few. Nobody seemed to care, but 70% of them said they wanted to discontinue all cryptocurrency donations, largely citing, ESG, energy, all of these things. But this is the funniest. I have to find it now, man. Basically, it said that they had a whole bunch of people voting. Here you go. But many of the that showed up to vote, there weren't that many, but many of the accounts, White observed, appeared to be single-purpose accounts created just for the discussion to persuade the foundation against crypto. Guys seen this before? Trolls and bots show up, sign up, troll you relentlessly until you give up, and then you change it. Yeah, so this is really unfortunate. If you're in places where you want to make a donation to Wikipedia but don't have access to do it, you were able to do it in crypto, you now can't. But honestly, this is an absolutely nothing burger, right? They've only received 347 donations last year entirely. So interesting news that they sort of bowed to the whim of the powers that be, but not really meaningful. Swiss National Bank owns no Bitcoin, but could buy in the future. Chairman says, I think we would have been very surprised if we found out that like a Swiss National Central Bank owned Bitcoin and we did not know about it. But this is the quote from the chairman, Thomas Jordan. Buying Bitcoin is not a problem for us. We can do that either directly or can buy investment products which are based on Bitcoin. We can arrange the technical and operative conditions relatively quickly when we are convinced we must have Bitcoin in our balance sheet. He said, for now, we do not believe Bitcoin meets the requirements of currency reserves. But interesting to hear a central banker say it's a possibility, something they would actually consider. So we will be watching because Switzerland, obviously, very far ahead of the curve for crypto adoption, right? Very far ahead of the curve. They have full cities there that are all crypto native. And we know that Switzerland stays generally neutral and is very favorable to people who want to do, I don't know, like shady shit with their money, whatever. Like I said, what did I say? Bathing Ape Yacht Club team raises 285 million with Otherside NFTs, clogs, Ethereum. I mentioned this when we were talking to Mike before. This is the most hyped NFT project basically ever. I went through a whole bunch of metrics. Maybe I should bring it up actually because I don't have it in front of me. 1 second. We talked about this in the intro of the newsletter today, right? But here you go. Let me make sure you can see this. It says, the Otherside project already has the #1 position on OpenSea for 30-day volume in just a couple of days. It's fast approaching top 5 all-time volume in just a couple of days. It's been on the market. The largest mint on OpenSea ever. Here you go. Perhaps the most impressive metric was the amount of Ethereum burned from this drop, because, this obviously is one of the key places. This is now #6 all-time burns just from this one project on a weekend. And within an hour of the mint, 26,000 Ethereum were burned because of EIP 1659, which Mike mentioned, 155 million permanently removed from the market in 24 hours. Crazy. But the problem is it basically broke Ethereum. Couldn't use Ethereum. This one single mint was so popular that it basically crushed Ethereum for a while. I heard, I cannot confirm, but $12,000 gas fees. $12,000 gas fees. People who got their hands on them making a lot of money. And here you go. Solana goes dark for 7 hours as bots swarm candy machine NFT minting tool. Wasn't immediately clear how the bot traffic overcame network safeguards. Once again, just a reminder that we are very early. And like I said before, very unlikely that any of these layer ones independently without layer twos, snarks, rollups, etc., will ever be able to scale for mainstream adoption. But that's not a big deal. It's like the 0 to 1 problem, right? Getting from 0 to 1 is the hard part. Getting from 1 to 10, you have all the entrepreneurs and innovators rush in and make it happen. They will solve these problems. They will fix everything. Oh, Emmy's here. Hey, Wolfpack. Hi. Love. Hey. Hope you all have an amazing day. Hope you guys have an amazing day. I can't really think of actually a better way to conclude. I will, of course, be back tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk with you guys again. If you haven't checked out the free newsletter, it's free, 5 days a week, completely free. And of course, check out Vauld, our amazing sponsor. Hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, having a wonderful Monday. I will see you guys on the morrow. Peace.
That's dope.